Quick introduction about our guest today. I'm very happy to welcome Luigi Ceccaroni. Is that correct? Luigi manages the innovation and strategic research at Earthwatch in UK. It's an independent research organization in Oxford. He's also an author of more than 100 publications on citizen science, the environment, artificial intelligence. That's what I learned about him yesterday, that his research started with AI and then he moved to citizen science around 10 years ago. Since then, he's been pretty passionate about citizen science activities, especially within the water domain. He's also the vice chair of the he was the vice chair of the European Citizen Science Association between 2019 and 2020. Today, Luigi will talk to us about ProBleu, one of the Horizon Europe and Mission Ocean projects that he's a partner in and leading aspects in. And it deals with promoting ocean and water literacy in communities within and around Europe. And this week is in Armenia to also engage with schools in Armenia to see how the project could be extended to our country. He's also going to share with us today some experiences from other projects in Earthwatch, how citizen science was implemented in different countries, including some countries in Africa. Correct. So that said, I give the floor to Luigi to share his knowledge with us.
Thank you, Garabet. Very happy to be here. Can I know just in 3 words what is the background, the general background of the people in the room?
Mix. Environmental sustainability students, faculty, researchers, transportation.
Cool.
Guest.
Yes.
Architecture.
Architecture.
Okay, well.
And communications. And
here we are. So this is my name. Garabet already introduced me.
Ceccaroni.
Ceccaroni. In Italian, AI. I'm Italian, but I work in Oxford, in the UK, another beautiful city. And recently I also became British, so dual citizenship now. And I work for a charity, environmental NGO called Earthwatch. Earthwatch, if you search for Earthwatch online, you will get the results, and we are not at the top because we are a network of 5 organizations. So we are Earthwatch Europe, and you can see, for example, let's say the main office is in Boston, in the US. Then we have an office in India that Google Maps keep in the wrong place. And then we have also an office in Japan and one in Australia. These 5 offices work completely independently. So we don't do anything together. We just share the brand and share a little bit our focus on citizen science, but we don't have a common project. And this is also why, being financially independent, we can apply for European funding. We were a branch.
Recording in progress.
So back to Earthwatch. If you search for it online, you will find our website. In this moment, we have this project called Tiny Forest that we are trying to, let's say, push because we are doing some biodiversity monitoring in this period. And also it's interesting because I visited the Armenian tree project and they do similar things actually. So we maybe will do some collaboration in the future. And if you add X at the top in the URL bar, then you will go to our group, the innovation group that deal with research and innovation at Earthwatch. So if you scroll down, you will see all our projects. You see CROPS is one about the scalability of citizen science. ProBleu Mixer is about impact assessment, etc. If you scroll even more down, you will see the team and you will find more about ourselves. So today, as Garabet said, I'm here mainly as an ambassador of ProBleu, but I will not talk a lot about ProBleu because maybe it's not too interesting for you. But I will explain a few things that might be interesting for you. Anyway, ProBleu is a project about water literacy, water sustainability in education. And I want to thank our host here for welcoming me these days, today, yesterday. So Alan, Garbett, and Alga, we were out yesterday and we had a fantastic time yesterday. So thanks for having me. And just as a general introduction to understand what ProBleu is about. So, okay, it's about water sustainability, water literacy, but there are a lot of projects about these things. Maybe the very different thing is about the fact that we provide funding about this to schools. Usually, there is no funding involved in projects. In this case, we support projects with up to about 3 million drams. And of course, these projects need to be related to water education. Why Armenia? Why I'm here? So this is the list of all the countries that we committed to fund. So we want to fund schools in all these countries, 44 countries, and Armenia never applied. So there is no school in Armenia that applied for this funding. And of course, we never distributed any fund to any school in Armenia. So I came to visit schools, to talk to people, to talk to organizations, not only schools, there are organizations that are working with schools, to understand what we can do to solve this lack of transfer of funding from the European Union to Armenia. So these days I was in some of the schools in Yerevan. So this is the Little Prince school. I was very excited to be in the Little Prince school. This was me with the Armenia Tree Project, and this is an organization about women health and the relation between women empowerment and an healthy environment. So, and actually I was also adopted by a group of artists. So I went to an artistic installation. I met Arine, and I could meet with some of the local artists. So it was very interesting also to know more about the let's say context here in Yerevan. Anyway, back to ProBleu. Let me just put it in some context, okay? So ProBleu is a European project. So this means that it's part of the European Union research program, which is called Horizon Europe. This is the budget of Horizon Europe. This is a number that
It's a lot of zeros.
doesn't mean anything probably to anyone. So this is the budget in drams for 7 years. So 40 trillion of drams. So it's a lot of money. And
40 million.
40 trillion.
So, and these are Horizon Europe's missions. So let's say that the research of the European Union is, of course, very organized in different, let's say, sectors and fields and domains. And one of the ways which research is prioritized at the moment is through so-called missions. This is a relatively new concept. It was created for this work program. And it's good to know it because this is where they try to channel most of the money of these 40 billions. They don't all go here. There is all kinds of different research, but I say that for the typical scientist nowadays, when they want to work, it's good if they organize, if they, let's say, put your research in line with one of these missions, because this is where the real funding is. So the 5 missions are adaptation to climate change, cancer, restore our waters and ocean, under climate neutral and smart cities, and healthy soils. So when we talk about ProBleu, we talk about being part of the mission in the middle, store our ocean and water, which wants to ensure healthy oceans, seas, coastal waters, and inland waters by 2030. This is the big goal. And this mission was called Starfish. It's not really called Starfish anymore, even if people like to call it Starfish. And let's say the objectives, the targets of the mission are also evolving. So this is not really static. The mission was presented in 2020, and in the 4 years from 2020, let's say the targets of the mission change a little bit. And so because we are working within the mission, we also need to understand a little bit how the mission is evolving. Because it was funny because at the beginning, the mission had 17 targets. And we created ProBleu around the 17 targets. So we created a call and all the work around 17 targets. And then one day we checked and the 17 targets are not there anymore. They grouped them into 3 big objectives. So now we slowly need to address that because there are schools around Europe that are working towards a target that is not a target anymore. But I mean, things are not changing radically, but say that the terminology and the context is evolving as it should in science. Anyway, the big, let's say, objectives are still there, and they are to reverse the degradation of oceanic, coastal, and inland waters, as we said, through 3 main, let's say, sub-objectives: protecting and restoring the ecosystem, preventing and eliminating pollution, and making the blue economy circular. So these are the 3 big blocks around which all the research and also the implementation of innovation projects is going. And why ProBleu is there? It is there because the success of all this depends in part on, let's say, the education and the future awareness of the people who are at school now. So the entry point of ProBleu in all this is changing the minds of the students so that when they finish school, they are more aware of the challenges around water. And this doesn't mean necessarily the local challenges. Of course, local challenges are the easiest one to approach because you can go down to your river or your stream, you see that it's polluted, and then you try to do something to improve it. But sometimes you might live in an environment that is quite pristine. I've been last month in the Faroe Islands, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I have to say that they don't have there a lot of problems related to water, but that doesn't mean that water as a global resource is not in trouble. Also because water, as you clearly know, it is not confined to a certain place. If something is polluted in one place, this pollution is easily transported through the ocean currents everywhere. In any case, the other concept that we work on is the concept of blue schools. This is very related to ProBleu. And let's say that there is a so-called network of European blue schools, which is one of the many networks of blue schools that exist in the world. This is not the only one. There is an Atlantic network of blue schools. There is an Asian network of blue schools. There is several American networks of blue schools. So, of course, because we are in Europe, with ProBleu, we collaborate with the European network of blue schools. But this doesn't mean that what we do is particularly different from other efforts around the world. So this network is important because it aggregates all the schools that want to make a special effort around water literacy and water sustainability. So let's say they inspire each other, they organize events with the schools, and they try to push the concept of more water sustainability as much as possible in education. Anyway, this network needs to be supported, it needs to grow, and we in ProBleu try to do exactly that. These are the objectives of the ProBleu project. So they are basically what you already might have understood. So we want to improve ocean literacy, water literacy in all the schools. Of course, in countries like Armenia, ocean literacy it's a little bit more far away than in countries like Spain, but this doesn't mean that students even here should know a lot about the ocean, its importance, and why we need to protect it and restore it. Anyway, as we said before, we work through funding schools, and this funding is happening through calls for project, calls for proposal. And this moment is important because the next call will open the 20th of September, which is in 2 days. So in 2 days, schools can start applying. And again, I hope that a lot of schools will apply. But let's now forget a little bit about ProBleu. And I would like to show you a few other things that we do at Earthwatch. So we do quite a few things at Earthwatch. I will show you a few, not really all of them. There are many important things that we do that are not really relevant for this occasion. So I will not mention them. You can find them in our website. So what I would like to focus on now is, let's say, what we do in the international context. Because Earthwatch, even if it's called Earthwatch Europe, works mainly in the UK. Our office in the UK, and let's say most of the activities happen in the UK. But what we do in the innovation group is actually just the contrary. We try to expand our reach as much as possible, and we try to work in places where there is more need of action around sustainability, and they don't have necessarily to be close to home. They are where they are, and the fact is that usually they are not close to home, and they are not in Europe. So we work a lot in the context of the existing Continental Association of Citizen Science. As I said, the focus of Earthwatch is citizen science. Everything that we do as an element of citizen science, usually this is the most important element. Sometimes it is not, but let's say our specialty really is citizen science, and everything we do wants to contribute to citizen science. Sometimes,
Luigi, you will explain what citizen science is, right?
okay. So, sorry.
Because some of the people in the audience, it's the first time they're hearing.
Absolutely. So citizen science, in just simple words, is when we work on some scientific challenge with the contribution and the participation of the general public. A typical example is data collection. So when we collect data about biodiversity, about environmental quality, and we do it with the citizens, with say the general population, then that's called citizen science. So there is an element that is a scientific element. So it's not just engagement. If you just engage people, that's engagement. It's not citizen science. So there is a scientific element, and there is a societal element. The historical typical example is bird watching. So bird watching became a typical citizen science activity because we have millions of people around the world collecting data about birds' presence, but they do it in a very scientific and controlled way. So it's not just them going out in the nature and writing down in their notebook the presence of birds, but they use applications through which their data are collected into a central database, and they can be used by any scientist all over the world. So let's say it's not for their fun, but it is also for their fun, but it's also for, let's say, the advancement of science. So nowadays, for example, if you think about bird presence data, 90% of the data are coming from citizen science. And I think less than 10% are coming from scientific, let's say, traditional scientific monitoring. So that's a field in which citizen science really is dominating. Other domains in which citizen science is strong is environmental monitoring, like measuring water quality, measuring air quality, measuring biodiversity changes. So this is what citizen science is, and usually it works through apps. So let's say that the citizens have an app in which they record data, they analyze data, they play with the data, and then these data are collected and analyzed at a larger level. For example, now, just today, we have a deadline for a project in which we are sending out a proposal about the creation of a marine citizen science data network. which precisely wants to create a very well organized and standardized network of organizations that collect data about marine citizen science, so that it's possible to use them and to advance, let's say, the science of related to the marine environment in a better way with the contribution of the citizens.
May the best team win.
Yeah,
We've also.
yeah, I'm sure that I was involved. So I was working
We're competing on that.
all night on this proposal to see if we can finish it and finally that. Anyway, there are 4 big associations in the world that are coordinating citizen science activities. And then to say that, for example, here, I don't know how you feel, if you feel part of something, but let's say that in my mind, this part of the world is not covered by any organization. So there is the strongest one are the one in Europe, the US, and Australia. We have a new Citizen Science Africa Association. We have something in Latin America. We have something in Asia, but Latin America and Asia are really not yet, say, formally organized as big organization. So these are gaps in the, let's say, the global presence of citizen science. And now, actually, I forgot to mention it, but there is something called Citizen Science Global Partnership that is a very strong organization that has been created not long ago that wants to really cover and organize all the efforts around citizen science around the world. Anyway, a little bit the last thing that I wanted to show you is an example of how we think and work about citizen science in the global south. And I wanted to use Africa as an example. So, you know, I come from traditional Europe. So, you know, Western Europe, I live between Italy, Spain, and the UK. So my way of thinking sometimes is very, not only traditional, but limited. Sometimes I think, I see things very black and white, because I think that I'm in a part of the world that have a very clear, let's say, position and history. And I try to see things very black and white. And when I'm in a country like yours, that is a country that is absolutely unknown by us traditional European. And I see the history, the relation that you have with a neighboring country. I see that the situation is much more fluid than what I'm used to. So, okay, we are in Asia, but we are very close to Europe. We have a lot of relation with Europe. So you are not, let's say, in the middle of the continent, like, at least I feel that you're not in the middle of the continent as I feel I am when I'm in Italy or in the UK. So, for example, for me, usually it's easy to think about global south and global north, but here, I don't know, where are we? Are we in the global north, in the global south, something in the middle? I don't know.
North of Middle East.
It's in the global north.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
middle
North
north.
of Middle East,
Okay.
in Asia and Europe.
Okay. So,
The center of the universe.
Connected.
so I would like to talk a little bit about the global south. Because as I was saying before, sometimes the environmental problems are, let's say, felt more strongly in the global south. And from the global north, we have difficulties to understand what they are and what is the impact of our actions, of our action during our normal life and of our action as scientists trying to solve the environmental challenges. So I say I dedicated the past years of my work at Earthwatch to try to extend our reach and our impact into the global south, especially in Africa, because for some legal reason in Earthwatch we have a license to operate only in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So, for example, we cannot really work in Asia, but that's a detail. Let's say that historically we work more in Africa than in other parts of the global south. And then we use Africa as an example to show that sometimes the way we think about it is important, and sometimes the way we think about it is distorted by the way in which, let's say, the political system and the political relations are laid down, and the way in which we are presented things that might not be really close to reality. So there are several problems that we could mention, for example, around environment, water, and that. So one thing is water scarcity. So I understand that Armenia is not really a country with where water scarcity is a problem, but water scarcity could be a problem everywhere. So it's not that even if you have a lot of water around, this doesn't mean that in the future you might not have a water scarcity problem.
We have water stress.
Okay. And so if we think about Africa, we have 300 million people who live in a water scarce environment. That in all Armenia, there are 3 million people, and we have 300 million there who don't have a clear access to water. Okay, so if we think about also the population growth, you probably know that the population growth in the next century, in the next half century, will happen mainly in Africa. So let's say the next billion people that will be added to the global number will be most exclusively in Africa. So if you think that we have 300 million people, and there are about 1 billion people living in Africa, and we add another billion, then this new billion will probably be added to the people suffering water scarcity. But then if we look at this map, we change completely the idea that we have about water scarcity. So probably you don't read, but let's say the yellow is economic water scarcity, while only the red is physical water scarcity, and the orange is almost water scarcity. So let's think about the two colors, the red and the yellow. So the red is where there is no water, according to this study. The yellow is where people don't have access to water because the management is bad. So the water is there, but let's say the government didn't do enough to distribute the water from the sources to the population. So we have the vast majority of Africa, and you have to see that to think that this is tropical Africa. You know? So we have water scarcity in a place where actually there is a lot of water, but the water doesn't get, clean water doesn't get to the tap of people. So this is important because economic water scarcity has clear solutions, while physical water scarcity is more complicated, but is not a problem without solution. So let's see this other picture. So blue is no water scarcity. So in the European Union, let's say in Western Europe, there is no water scarcity. No, not at all. So let's say that 100% of the European Union has water, and this water is drinkable. Let's say that in 100% of the houses of the European Union, you open the tap, you get water all the days, and this water is drinkable. So if you think about this frontier, I mean, we have Spain and Italy that are just a few kilometers away from Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. And it's not possible that a few kilometers away, you have full water availability, and on the other side of, let's see, of this small stretch of water, you have no water. So if you think about it, okay, there will be definitely some physical differences, and there is a geographical context that is different, but it cannot be that different. So it cannot be that in Sicily, we don't have absolutely any water problem, and in Tunisia, a few kilometers away, there is no water. So if you check, for example, if you check the temperature, for example, you see that the temperature is the same. Sicily and Tunisia, they have the same temperature. More or less. There is not a big difference. But if you see the GDP, there is a big difference. So sometimes what we are sold as water scarcity, actually, the problem is a wealth problem. You have such a difference in wealth that what is possible in terms of infrastructure in Italy, in Spain, in Europe in general, is not possible in some of the Northern Africa countries, just because the money is not there, in the sense that maybe it's there, but the way in which it's managed is not, let's say, conductive to work for the general benefit of the population. So let's see, just a few words about data gaps. You see, the white places are places with no data, especially, let's think about water data, okay? So sometimes we say the first step is monitoring. We need to have data, because without data, we cannot implement policies about water sustainability. So sometimes this is used as an excuse, because we don't have data, because our monitoring system is deficient, well, then we cannot do anything. The two things need to go together. So on the one hand, you need to monitor more. On the other hand, there are things that are clearly doable with the data that we have, even with no data. Sometimes it's very clear that the river is polluted. You don't need to go there and measure it. Sometimes there's no doubt about it. Let's suppose that there is no monitoring problem. It doesn't matter. You can talk to the people and you understand that the water is polluted. But let's see, for example, the case of Algeria. Okay, Algeria, no data. Why? So what does it mean that we have no data about water? Okay, maybe there are no monitoring programs, but let's see Algeria. I mean, there's no water because this is a desert. Okay, so sometimes it might make no sense to measure water in a place where there is definitely no water. So we have parts of Africa in practice we have no water. So we cannot wait to fill these data gaps to start thinking about what to do in terms of water distribution. So sometimes let's think about what is the reality of something, and let's move on without having to fill all the data gaps. And finally, a few words about pollution. So pollution is a very, very dramatic problem in Africa. Not only in Africa, I think that probably pollution is the most important problem we have also in Europe. But and we often, because I live in the UK, and we often hear about okay, there is a polluted river, this company discharge whatever they discharge into the river, and so we have problems of pollution in the UK, but we have problems of pollution in Africa, and we cannot think that they are the same. So we need to understand that sometimes we have the same problem, but the order of magnitude of this problem is different. So, for example, this is a news of, I don't remember, 2021. Sewage makes river Thames swim spot unsafe after heavy rain. A sewage discharge of the water company in River Thames. And these are the pictures that were associated to this article. This one was one of the pictures, and this was the other picture. So this water is clean. I mean, there is some foam, but this is clean water. So this is the picture that they associate in the UK to a pollution event. And I mean, what picture is this?
Sounds horrific.
And so I went, I went to Africa many times, and this is Nairobi. So this is the Nairobi River. This is the main river going through Nairobi. This is Kibera. Kibera is a slum in Nairobi. So this is the river, you see, and this is still the river. So these two kids are playing on the river. Okay, the river, there is so much plastic and pollution that they can safely play on the river because it's so thick, the amount, the layer of plastic that there is no danger. There is no danger related to the water. So this is the two things, and there is no news in the Nairobi newspaper saying the Nairobi River is polluted. So we need to understand that sometimes the level of the problem is so different that if we think that we have the same problem, sometimes we think in the wrong way. And to conclude, let me just mention two projects that we have that try to help a little bit in making things better in very different ways. So one is the Mix project. The Mix project is one of our let's say, most important project. We spent 4 years to formalize the way to measure impact assessment in a citizen science project. So we developed the platform, and through this platform, you can know more and you can work about impact assessment in your project. And the other project is called the Freshwater Watch. This is one of our main projects at Earthwatch. And we work a lot in Africa with Freshwater Watch. And this is a program in which we connect with the local communities and we help them to measure the water quality in the environment. So it's a community-focused initiative. We want to empower this community to collect data together with us, together with the government, together with the scientists. And then if they find that the water is polluted or if they have some problem, so they can go to the government and say, well, you're not monitoring our well, our river, our lake, but we do, and we have this data. They are collected through a scientific methodology. They are supported by Earthwatch, by the local university, and they show that there's a problem. So can you do more about the safety and the availability of water? And we work with this together with the UN in the context of one of the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, one that's called 632, that is about the amount of water that is in good environmental conditions. And we are working in several countries: Zambia, Sierra Leone, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, South Africa. In all these countries, we work with the communities, with the government, with the local scientists to try to make the contribution of citizen science more important towards empowering this community. And of course, we also support education, environmental awareness, and we try to change also the behavior of the people. But most important, we try to change the policy in these areas, because while in the European Union the policy is there, we cannot ask for more. Let's say when we talk about water and European Union, we have fantastic legislation. Sometimes we have problems because the companies don't respect the legislation, so they break the law. So the way of working is try to find ways for companies not to break the law. When we work in Africa, the legislation is lacking. The government is not doing enough. So the way of acting is completely different, for example, in Africa and in Europe. And I wanted to show you this example because sometimes I feel that you might be a little bit in the middle. Sometimes there are things that are working very well. Sometimes there are things that are working less well. I was visiting a school the other day, and there was a stream that was passing by the school, and it was smelling. There was plastic. It didn't really look like a fantastic place. And then I went to the school and they said, well, actually, the river is, well, the stream is not the stream is in much better condition than a few years ago. So we fought and we succeeded in having the government to improve this. So it went from, it was category 4, and I don't know now what category it is, but let's say that it was already in better conditions, but still, to my eyes, it was still in conditions that were not ideal. So there is always room for improvement, and I think that in your situation, you can find particularly useful to try to improve the environment. In my case, I'm working more about the water environment, but I'm sure that there are a lot of things that can be done here. So even if here it's a little bit out of the scope of my activities usually I've been really interested in working more with them, see in the future if we can also do things together so that we can work together also here. So well, it was a few things that I wanted to share. So that's it.
Thank you. Can I just jump in with the thing? Can you give us a very specific example of how you engage citizens in water monitoring? Both one maybe example in the African context and one maybe in the European context. How do you engage citizens in collecting information? Do you give them kits? Do you exactly what goes on?
Yeah. So let's say that if we start with the UK, so we have in the UK something that is called the Great UK Water Break. And water blitz.
Briggs.
Blitz.
Blitz.
Yeah, so it's let's say a water blitz is an invitation to the public to collect data in a very concentrated time
period.
Usually is a weekend, an extended weekend, I say from Friday to Monday. This is happening, I think, this month or next month. So what we do in this case is to reach out to as many people as possible through social media, through our channel, the typical, let's say, dissemination channel of an organization. And we say, are you available to go to your river and measure water quality that weekend? We will send you kits. And we send the nitrates and phosphate kits. And
these are, how much are these usually to buy? Are they pennies or they're, you know?
you can think about 500 grams each kit.
€1 each? Or...
Yeah, about a pound each point. So to measure a point, we usually spend, which is not a lot, but it depends. It's not a lot for somebody in the UK. It's a lot for somebody in Africa. So in Africa, we cannot even propose them to buy the kits. And we usually do it in the UK. So usually a community that wants to participate had to pay us £500 a year for everything, the kits, the maintenance of the website, the support. So say there's a price tag usually associated with this. What is the difference with this blitz? That the kits are distributed for free. So they received they've been very successful. So for example, we opened the registration for this blitz, and we wanted to keep it open for a couple of months. After just a few weeks, it was already full. We reached the capacity to say that we had the budget for X thousands of kids, and we reached that capacity. Because, of course, it's a cost.
This, the schools themselves are pushing.
In this case, it's us talking to the general public. So it's not schools. There are a few schools participating, but usually is a local community or just people.
Citizens for interested, concerned.
Exactly. I mean, people who are concerned about the quality of their local river, they participate. What is the trick here is that we do it for free. So it's easy to say, okay, I sign up, I will receive the kit, and then I don't do it. If I do it, I do it. If I don't do it, I don't do it. I didn't pay anything. So doing things for free is also dangerous because, for example, I think that we have 60% of the people who do it. This means that 40%, which means thousands of kids, are there probably not using. So it's okay because this is the largest monitoring experiment in the UK, but it's not super efficient. You know, if you think that 40% of the kids get lost. So this is a typical example of how we do things in the UK.
Sorry, on that note, how do you train the citizens to use the kits?
Right. So the training is done online. So Freshwater Watch, which is what we do, it's a very mature project. So we develop a lot of things around Freshwater Watch. So let's say before being able to use the kits, you have to follow an online course explaining what to do. And this basically it's a series of videos, and they are really well done. Let's say that I mean you have to watch them, but of course you can skip them. You know, let's say that it's not difficult, but if you don't know how to do it, you will not be able to do it. So let's say that we offer this say video course. They can get in touch with us. We can support them if they have a problem. We have a team of people that are there to support them. So even when they collected the data, if they have troubles uploading them, or so there are several ways in which they can send us the data. But let's say that if you follow the instruction, the quality of the data that you collect is very good. It's very good to the point of the precision of the data. Yeah. But they say that the fact that is somebody who is not a scientist collecting the data is not a problem. So I did it many times with communities. they learn very quickly how to do it, and they quickly become better than me. Sometimes I think 2 years ago, I went to a very remote place in Tanzania. So we went to a village. So we went on a boat, we went to the place where they had to collect data. And you see, there were kids, very young kids, and there were people that were maybe 70 or 80 years old. So they took out the kids, and with a practice that I don't have, they started to do everything they had to do. It was amazing to see these people in a remote part of Africa, far away from everything, using our kids in a very professional way. And they were doing it every month. So, for example, and the difference in Africa, that in Africa, you don't have people that are necessarily worried about the quality of their river, in part because they have more pressing problems, in part because it's really far away from their way of thinking. So they wouldn't do it unless they have some clear incentive. So, for example, in Africa, usually we pay them some money. We give for each community, we give them a phone, a smartphone, and then we pay for the data, and we give some monetary incentive. But we are talking really about peanuts for us, but it's not peanuts for them. So again, at the end, the cost for us is still about £1 for including the money that we give them, etc. So it's still not expensive, much less expensive than if you send a scientist to do the same. But there is a necessity of some incentive in some parts of the world, while this is not. I mean, if you understand how we do it, is also an incentive. It's like we send you the kids for free. But we have many communities, hundreds of communities that do it, paying for let's say for this, so in which we don't have to give them the kids for free. Well, that's maybe the main difference.
Any questions?
So what interested me when you showed us the map of no data, what type of data were you looking for? For example, in Egypt, in Libya, a lot of the no data parts is clear deserts, unless there's a man-made canal passing through there, there's no river, no lakes. Are you focusing on data relating to where you physically see the water, or are you referring to underwater, underground water?
Right. Well, actually, it's the two things. I say that when this is done in the context of the UN monitoring. So let's say that the UN actually indicates where data should be collected. So for each country, there are places along the rivers and also in underground water where data should be collected. Of course, when we talk about citizen science, it's very difficult to work with groundwater. So usually, underground water is not. There are a few cases, but it's not typically considered in a citizen science project. So this was a map that was not about citizen science. So, and I don't know the availability of water, but they say that the map was including surface water and underground water. The fact that there are no data, it could be, as we said before, that there might be no water, and so no effort is made to measure anything about that. It could be also that there is some water and is not let's say monitored. I don't know. I'm not really an expert. It's just a consideration that sometimes we cannot have the same way of working in the desert and in Sweden. So in Sweden there are 100,000 lakes, and probably 100,000 rivers. Well, maybe less rivers, but they say that even Sweden doesn't monitor all their lakes. They said it's too much. We don't have the means to monitor 100,000 lakes. So in that case, citizen science is interesting because we cover parts of the geography that is not covered by the government. And sometimes they don't cover it because they know that there is no problem. So they say, okay, well, we have a limited budget for water monitoring, and we concentrate in the lakes where we know that there is a necessity, or there is, let's say, a potential problem. So there are many different things, for example, because another thing that is interesting is that when you see, because I work a lot with the UN and the SDGs, there is this SDG 632 that has a global mapping. So you go and you see the countries that are reporting more or less about this particular indicator. And curiously enough, you see that where you have no data is the global south, especially Africa, and also the European Union. So the European Union is not reporting about this parameter. And so if you see a map and you see that Africa and the European Union are not reporting, you don't really understand what happens, you know, because the reasons are completely different. In Africa, there is no reporting because the government doesn't do it. It might be because there is no water, it might be because they don't want to spend the money in the monitoring. In Europe, they don't report for the SDG because there is something in Europe called the Water Framework Directive, in which all the countries in Europe, the 27 countries, have to report for the Water Framework Directive. And the Water Framework Directive is much more, let's say, specific and detailed than the SDGs. So actually, they report to the European Commission, and they don't want, because the reporting is slightly different. They say, well, we already report a lot. Now you want us to report a reduced part of this data to the UN. Well, we don't care. We already reported enough. So they don't report not because they don't measure, just because they don't want to spend money in reporting the same thing twice in a slightly different format. You know, so it's sometimes when you see no data, it could be for very different reasons.
Question. Within your experience with Freshwater Watch, both in Europe and in Africa, what has been the response or reaction from national authorities, policymakers, in the sense that do they find this data reliable? Are there a lot of excuses that these simple kits are less sensitive or less accurate than, say, you know, other standards and so on? How is the debate there?
Yeah, I mean, the reaction is very different. For example, a little bit for the reasons that we mentioned before. In Europe, the governments measure water quality. They do it. They don't do it enough, maybe, but they do it. So let's say that there is less pressure in Europe for citizen science to do the monitoring, because also because people say, well, I'm paying taxes for the government to measure water quality, so why now I should spend my weekend in doing something that the government is supposed to do? And the government does it. The problem is that the monitoring that is done in Europe is not really, it is also, but it's not, the main thing is not to say, okay, we want to know what's going on. The main reason is that we already know what is going on, but now we have data that we collected ourselves and we can show you. So here there is a pollution event. Pollution is usually due to agricultural runoff and to water company discharging non-treated water. Mm-hmm. So all this is illegal. So it's not that we ask the government to change the law. No, the law is there. And so we say, okay, you're monitoring, but you're not doing enough because you already know that this is polluted. So we are stressing this. We collect extra data in places where you don't collect it and in places where you collect it. And we want you to change things. So this is to make pressure on the government to find the companies that are polluting the river. In Africa, the response of the government is completely different because they are really, we talk to the government, usually is the National Statistical Office that is collecting the data. They're really grateful that we provide them with more data because they don't have really the budget and the capacity to monitor. So in that sense, we have a very good relation with the government because before being worried that the data show that it's polluted, because they already know, they can let's say, sometimes African countries feel let's say in a subordinate position towards global north country because they are sometimes ashamed that they don't do enough to do the monitoring. So when they have to present the data in an international context, they don't have data to show. So now, thanks to citizen science, they have more data to show. So they are grateful that thanks to these initiatives, they can contribute more to their own monitoring efforts and to be able to show to other countries that they are doing more. Then we are still far away to solving the problems, but it's let's say it's a good relation. At some point when there will be enough monitoring, maybe there will start to be a conflict like, okay, well, now we have the data, now do something, you know, it's not good data. So it's at least what I've been exposed to is a good relation between governments and the general population and citizen science.
No, we're out of time, but I would love to hear from our students. Many of you, is the first year outside of high school, the school system. If someone came up to you and said, we're going to do citizen science as a project for your schools, to learn about the water quality, about biology, about the kind of the environment, what would be your reaction? What would you want to know more? What would you want to do you see this as something interesting? What would you want to get out of it? Go ahead.
So I think it's for me, it would be a great opportunity to acknowledge my cities area, for example, because we have rivers, streams, and we have some water, like not lakes, but small
Ponds.
Yeah, ponds. So which are like really polluted, and examining them and finding solutions for them to be clean is, for me, it would be very exciting. And
You think students and schools would be interested in?
Not necessarily everyone, but I think the smart ones would. It would be a pleasure for us. You're absolutely right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I think if the schools were the initiators of this, I think it would be much more interesting for students, because it would be something not really related to their classes, and that would be interesting. But if the students as individuals had to do it, I think the response would be less interested, because they wouldn't want their time to go to something that isn't mandatory. And if the school provides this opportunity, they would see it as like something not really related to their classes, but which is also very interesting. Yeah.
So it's extracurricular.
Yeah.
After the sign.
Say something,
Yeah.
continuing her, knowing, I think, that when because I was a child before I grew up, yeah. It's when the school gives you something, you either feel obliged to do it, or you feel some force. But it depends on how you explain this, how you present this problem. This is not just doing something curriculum or out of curriculum. This is something which depends on your life. This is somehow being involved in a more global act, a global life-giving act. I think if this comes and presents like this, that you are being a part of global future sustainability, and you can help, you can save your future, your water, your environment, your nature, with involving or being contributed in this program, or being aware citizen. This will help you, your government, your life, your family to be safer, to be healthier, and of course, wealthier.
So there will be kids who are motivated by those kinds of high
Yeah.
ideals. There'll also be kids who are interested in, well, nitrates and phosphates. Where do they
Yes.
come from? And, how do we get rid of this? So that someone will start getting involved in the chemistry and so there'll be different directions children would go with this kind of thing.
I know a lot
I'll
of.
give you I'll give you an example that surprised me. So I yesterday went to the international British school that is up the road, and So I was going to meet with the principal, but the principal was sick, so I met with another member of the management. So I presented, it was just me and her. I presented the project. She was, well, she was happy to listen and, okay, we'll be in touch. But I was not really convinced about the fact that they really liked the idea. But then yesterday they wrote me and said, well, look, we talked about this with the teachers and we would like you to come back and I will go back tomorrow. And we want you to talk to the students because I think that the project is a fantastic idea, but we want the students themselves to see it with their eyes from you and to be motivated by the idea. So if you can come back and present something for the students, that would be fantastic. And this is the first time that the school invites me twice. And I will go there and we'll be very happy to present to the students. But it's good because a little bit, as you were saying, it will be the moment in which the students can see that they can be part of something bigger than the school. And it's not necessarily the teacher that say, okay, now we have to do this, and this is just another activity. So, well, let's see.
I can give a 5-minute presentation on otters and some of the stuff we're trying to do in this direction that people can stay around for another 10 minutes. Yeah.
So the Aquatic Center has another project on citizen science and water. And through that project, we're working with lots of different countries, but also we want to do stuff focused on Armenia.
Okay. So, like Luigi already talked about Mission Ocean, this is another sister project that we at AUA are leading, coordinating. It's also part of the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters by 2030. And it receives about, from the 40 trillion dirhams that you mentioned, around 400 million dirhams. Along with AUA, we have 11 other partners across Europe. And like I said, we're coordinating this, but I can't switch the slides. What?
Maybe sure.
Okay, so very quickly, what are the objectives of the OTTERS project? It aims to promote societal transformation. So how us as a society can transform towards better protecting the environment. It's fostering agency where we actually act like this ecosystem belongs to us and we need to protect it. And this is done through scaling up of citizen science activities and projects. How do we scale up citizen science? On one hand, we need to look into specific standards. As in today, some of you from 1 or 2 class, I was talking how a lot of the methods we used in measuring stuff have to be identical or very similar so that the results are comparable. So if each student, if each school, if each community is measuring things in a different way, then the results aren't very comparable. And then you don't have this potential to analyze things on a larger scale. So having or promoting common standards and telling people what type of methods to use is important towards going on from a local community scale to a larger national or international scale. And then we're also studying what makes projects effective or successful versus other projects that fail or stop after a year or 2 when the funding is over. So then we can take or have lessons learned from successful projects and try to replicate it elsewhere. Then we're also trying to pilot cross-community or watershed-based projects. So again, not one small community doing one project, but how can we take different efforts happening, say, in this village and then the other village nearby or another city nearby, how can we combine them under bigger umbrella projects? So these communities also start talking to each other. So that if one village or one town is polluting upstream, the villages or other cities downstream will also see the impact. But once the people start talking to each other, they know that what we're doing up has a very bad impact on people living downstream. So they start seeing things from a larger perspective. And then, like I said, we need to scale this up, all that data, how is it used? It goes to the national level and then regional level, European level, international level, and so on. Luigi already talked about UN SDGs and so on. So like I said, the main three pillars are promoting best practices or methods, different standards, how things are measured, clustering efforts, small scale, grassroots, local scale towards making things more regional. And then third of all, changing the hearts and minds. So it's not just creating data or collecting data, but also changing how people think and behave about their ecosystem. So part of this school, I'm going to focus only on the educational aspect of OTTERS. It's a lot bigger, but since today we've met for ProBleu and the like, I wanted to focus on our educational efforts. We organized a summer school for educators, for teachers of middle and secondary schools in the beginning of July, where a lot of these teachers, we had about 20 teachers coming from across Europe, and we had 3 teachers from Armenia also represented there. They learned about the importance of water. They looked into some pollution aspects like microplastics. They listened to successful stories from Italy and other countries, and they had hands-on experience on how to use different kits, how to measure water quality, etc. And in a way, they worked together in teams to develop ideas how all of these could be integrated in their teaching, into their, for instance, biology, chemistry, geology classes. So then what we want to do in Armenia is implement a lot of these thoughts and concepts around the Lake Sevan Basin. We've already identified around 6-7 schools in the Lake Sevan Basin. You can see them on the map here with the dark blue dots, where we've identified very active teachers that want to collaborate and integrate into this project. We're also working with UATE. They're famous for having the RMAT labs, which are extracurricular centers that involve student training. They want to involve their students as well in the region in Gerardkunik to develop interactive courses, etc., that could be integrated in these schools as well. And they want to take part in the measurements. And then the basic idea is each school, they can adopt a river nearby. So if we live here and there's a river 1 kilometer away, this school adopts a river, and with their teacher, they go out twice a month. They use these kits that we train them how to use, and they go and measure the water quality, nitrates, phosphates, and so on, like Luigi mentioned. And then they report the data somewhere where all the schools could see not only their own results, but also the results of all the other schools. So to do that, AUA, us, the OTTERS Project, were thinking of organizing a number of workshops for water quality measurements, so the practical side of things, to tell them about the standards and the best practices and the methods of how they should go out, collect data, how frequently they should collect, what are the different strategies, and to make sure that the data quality is there, that the data could actually be used afterwards. If the data quality is low, then nobody will want to use it.
And then integrating it into their coursework.
Well, yeah, we thought. So part of that, we're also going to develop toolkits and guidelines like brochures or handbooks where we give to the teachers, we give to the schools step-by-step scenarios. This is what you do. This is how you use the kit. This is how you report the data, etc. And then we guide them on how to share the data and make it accessible. We're also going to help them join the European network of blue schools that Luigi already talked about. Once they become part of the European network of blue schools, they also, of course, get access to additional information, additional grants, and so on. And I don't know why the other slides don't exist. Okay. So, like I mentioned, we want to make the data accessible. The Armenian government, the Ministry of Environment, are working on developing an eco portal where you see a lot of the public data, what the government measures, is available on an interactive map. And we're in conversations with them now that also citizen science data could be available there. So people maybe in different colors, different symbols, etc., could see these are the official national data, and these are the citizen science data. And they could also compare to see if the quality is there, the numbers are similar, and so on. But the idea is here that each school, they don't only see their own results, but they see the results coming from across all the schools around the basin. And then they could also compare their results with other schools. Our river is in better shape than other rivers, or our river is more polluted than other rivers in the basin. Why is that the case? What's polluting it? And then they start analyzing it, they start becoming a lot more vocal. Okay. So last but not least, we also want to facilitate inter-school collaborations, where we're thinking of different types of events to do this. So like I mentioned, UATE, they volunteered to develop interactive online courses that all the students could use from any school. We've also talked with some of the private schools or other schools that have additional capabilities, like they have their labs and expertise, where, for instance, public schools in Gerhardskundig could collect some water samples and send it to other schools that have labs, where some of their students could do additional analysis, like for coliform bacteria, if sewage water is mixed with it, they could, for instance, have Petri dishes, cultivate the bacteria, monitor if the water is polluted, etc. And again, share the results between the schools. And one idea we had was at the end of the academic year, say in May or June, all of the schools come together. There's one big event in Gerhardskundig in the Lake Sevan Basin, where all of the schools, the students themselves present the results, they share the data, and they start discussions. Which are the most polluted rivers? What is causing the pollution, etc. And the parents would also be there. Maybe public authorities would also be there. And the community starts discussing about water pollution. So this is where everything starts becoming democratic, but very bottom up, where the discussion is basically started by the students, but it then involves all the community, all the members of the community. And like I said, once the data is available, everybody has access to it. We will instruct the teachers how they could integrate all of this in their teaching in biology, chemistry, and so on. And they told us, for instance, 9th grade, 10th grade, Lake Sevan is a topic that they already teach. So then, the more up-to-date information could also be integrated into their teaching. And they could maybe show the map that is produced. The students could follow real time, like last measurement was last week or last month. And that would be a lot more engaging. So that's kind of our idea with the OTTERS project. If you have any additional suggestions now or later, would be very happy to hear them. And if you want to get involved, we'd also be very happy to have you. Thank you.
Press release.
I have to jump to the other summit if you want to take over.
Yes, no, I'm just. Guys, any questions? He needs to run somewhere else. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having.
And there's please pastries and coffee and whatever there. Please take water.